So what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I was just talking to your publicist about where you're at and all that kind of stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but if I understand correctly, you just kind of finished up the Euro leg of your tour, right? How'd that go?
Yeah, it was Europe and the UK.
Cool.
It was good, man. It was a little trippy because we were every venue we went to, they were like, "You're the first international band here." And we
Damn.
were like, "Is that a good thing or sad?" Uh, but it was clearly a good thing for the shows we were able to have. But you know, an example of how truly strange and different it is touring post COVID is that, and in the world we're in, like our last show was going to be in Warsaw, and that became a refugee camp for Ukrainians.
Oh wow.
So obviously that show wasn't going to happen. But when you have things like that, you know, it's just we're in really hard or strange times in a way. And but we were happy because I think the shows provided this level of sense of normalcy for 90 minutes and this feeling of relief and release throughout. So
Yeah.
I thought it was great. It was just it was heavy to walk around and be like, don't catch COVID, don't stop the tour. Like the whole thing is just,
Yeah.
it's loaded a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And so were you over there when, not to like kind of like dive into this too much, but were you over there when all this stuff kind of kicked off in Ukraine?
Yeah, yeah,
So
we were
what
over
was that
there.
kind of like with all that stuff like kind of transpiring and being kind of like stuck over there working?
I think we were just in disbelief,
Yeah,
just I think we were probably the same as that the world was feeling, and that this can't possibly be happening. And there's a feeling of absurdity when you're realizing you're going out and doing something that is so it's emotional and it's a release, but it feels almost like a luxury when all this other stuff is going on.
definitely.
And so there's this, I don't know, there's definitely a feeling of this is a bit absurd that we're out here, but you're also trying to serve that role of for those who do come to shows, trying to serve some sort of role of helping people hold on to their hope and sanity through music. It's bigger than all of us. It's just music, I think, serves a lot of people that way, including myself as a fan. So I think there's something beautiful and righteous about music that you can't even understand. And I think it's a good role to play. But at the same time, it's upsetting, and to say the least, and it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around.
Definitely. I mean, for all of us, it kind of is. But to kind of get into the North America tour a little bit, you're going to be kicking off the tour with us here in Jacksonville, with two shows actually, which is pretty exciting. What can
Yeah.
we kind of expect for your shows, and what are you going to be bringing to the table?
Well, we have 4 albums, and we'll play all 4 of them. We'll play the entirety of Brightside, which
Sick.
is our most recent one, and kind of just span through the rest of them in different ways. But I feel like we never really had enough music to pull off a show the way I could hear it or see it in my mind until recently, where there's not really a moment to grab a beer or take a pee. It's like I feel like the whole thing is concentrated in this way,
Yeah,
and it's 90 minutes of maybe more than that of just finally we're at a point where I feel like this music fits the space, because everything took off really quickly, and we had a 43-minute record on our first record. So we were expected to fill a lot of time, and I don't feel like there's any fillers now. So it feels good. It feels like we're prepared now for this
yeah.
finally. And it was many years of look over here, don't just trying to distract the audience long enough to get to the songs that we had written. So
Yeah,
it's a good feeling. I like going into these shows now. It's not trying to pull a rabbit out of a hat.
yeah. You got a couple more arrows in your quiver these days, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the right way to put it.
Yeah. So with the new album, I love it. It's amazing. But
Thanks, man.
so and doing a little bit of research on some of your other interviews, you talked about how the recording process was a little bit different and how it was just more of like a straight release. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. The typical way that we work is through Jared and I will exchange voice memos, and then we'll meet up after that pile of voice memos grows big enough, and we'll try to make really, really fleshed out demos to the point where it's basically the song, but we don't have nice microphones, you know?
Yeah.
And then we go to the studio and we just kind of execute those songs. That was the old way of doing things. And when you think about it, it was kind of based upon, you know, you do all that stuff in the privacy of your own home because it's not really, it doesn't cost you anything. And it's really expensive to be in a studio.
Yeah.
And you know, for us, we didn't really trust ourselves to know what was good in the moment. It kind of had to percolate for a while. And I think now something has shifted where I made a solo record in between album 3 and the album 4, and it was all done very much like we did at Brightside, where you just come in, you show up, you have a bare bones idea what you're trying to do, and then the result of the recording, or the recording is more spontaneous. It feels very much more off the cuff because it is, as opposed to, let's do this thing that happened in the demo, let's recreate that. That's what happens a lot on records. You know, you're just trying to find the magic of the demo. So for us, we were making essentially demos with world-class equipment.
Yeah.
That's what the album is, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a lot more raw energy. And I think that's why a lot of people like, I mean, there's a lot of examples, but if you hear like Otis Redding sing and you hear his outtakes are just as good. There's just different choices being made.
Yeah.
Neil Young is famous. Bob Dylan, they're famous for not doing too many takes, you know, and I think the current state of music is that it can be so poured over, and we were guilty of this, so poured over and meticulously combed through that you lose all those artifacts that actually bring you back to that music that we grew up loving.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is just embracing that, our own flaws in the demos that we ended up loving in the beginning, and trying to do that from the start. And the result was, I think, our best record to date easily. But they always say, like, you know, it's almost like, you know how people have second marriages and they tend to work out more.
Yeah.
It's like you have to learn a lot to make those decisions the right way. And I think we couldn't have done this before. That was the path. We had to work the way we worked. But now that we're here, I'm glad we're here, because there's a bit of more faith that things are going to work out with the song. I think It used to be the sky is falling if we don't have a bridge or something, you know.
Yeah.
Until we did.
And just in listening to it feels as though like the music process for you became more cathartic and a little bit more like a mental health release kind of thing. Do you feel like that? Like being able to just kind of like play what you needed to play was better for your mental health in that kind of aspect?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of that when you're in an isolated pandemic situation, whoever you are, you tend to lose touch with yourself, because the things that you do that make you feel you and that provide you with that feeling of purpose and catharsis and wonderment, you don't necessarily get those sitting around staring at four walls and just, you know, being safe from a virus, but just losing your mind. So I think in a lot of ways, this was a good album to write, because it wasn't ignoring the pain around or within. It was actually talking about it, but through song. And, you know, the beauty of songs is that you can dress it up as happy or as beautiful as you want, and it can still have a very hard and sad or ugly message. But the combination of those two things is what's so great about music. So it was a beautiful thing to be able to write music again and come from that place. And in a lot of ways, when I listened back, maybe some of it was in an effort to bring myself out of the depths. You know, something like, there's a song called Birthday, and it's sort of about this idea that we all still wanted to see one another, and we all still wanted to mark these milestones, and we wanted a reason to get together. And even in crisis, even in the worst of crises, you're going to see people finding a reason to celebrate something, because we're all undeniably hopeful. Even as cynical as someone gets, the most cynical of people still have hope. And that song kind of captures this idea of, you know, the absurdity of the times, like having a Zoom wedding or having a Zoom birthday,
Yeah.
or, you know, going and my wife giving birth to our daughter, and I'm having to wear a mask for almost the entire thing, holding my baby. There's something so strange about that. And yet there's this celebration. So I think a lot of the album has this kind of like double side, two sides of the coin feeling that I think it's always had. Good music's always had, but it's, you know, if you look at the best music that I grew up on, I used to listen to, you know, it was like a classic rock station growing up. And so much of that music was rooted around, let's say, Vietnam. I never went through that, but I felt the conflict. I felt the hard times coming through all that music that really generated this insane art. And I think that in some weird way, this is our generation's version of that. We're pushing off of something real, instead of just on board, you know. Yeah. This is like, because we're lucky, we're living in really fortunate times, but this is a hard thing that everybody's going through. And I think it provides us with something to push off of and rally around with each other.
Definitely. And it's something that everybody can kind of like connect over, even if it is like something that isn't
worldwide too, which is weird. Normally those things are isolated even to like a country. Now it's like everywhere. That's why touring around the world, I think these songs connected even more as well, just because how often does that ever happen? Maybe, hopefully it never happens again in our lifetime.
Yeah.
It's a wild thing.
But so yeah, I want to talk about Bright Side, the song specifically. I just got done watching the music video. It's extremely powerful, but I know that there's a little bit of a backstory behind it involving some mushrooms, if I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to talk about that situation specifically, but maybe how psychedelics have aided you in like creative and emotional release and that kind of stuff would be cool.
Yeah, my wife's late father, he was a big proponent of psychedelics, and he said every once in a while you got to rearrange the furniture. And I think between that and the idea that there are studies coming out about depression lowering, and living in Denver and seeing how magic mushrooms are legal, but you can't sell them, but you can grow them and consume them. You just can't possess them in these. There's weird laws around it, but it's been decriminalized in a lot of ways, because I think they're starting to find that it can be therapeutic. And for me, oddly, I never really vibed with weed. Whenever I smoked, I was always the most paranoid and / starving person in the room. And so it was a bad combo. And and later in life, when I finally tried mushrooms, I was thinking, well, this is even going to be even worse. And I felt right at home. And I've written lyrics for this album while taking them. But also, you know, in the song itself, I think it's, you know, that song Bright Side, I think it's about this couple that is sort of in their own womb together. They're in this, like, I imagine them in this egg together, and the world can't hurt them. And their love keeps them going. And around them, the world is sort of falling apart, and there's all these disasters around them, but they're keeping each other alive in that way. And I think everybody had somebody, hopefully, like that, or maybe even more than one person in their life that kept them afloat. I'll be your bright side, baby, tonight is just like, I'll be your buoy. I'll keep you floating through this hard time when we're all treading water. It could be any analogy to that, but, you know, in that other mushroom story regarding psilocybin in a hotel room and being stranded in a bed, it's all rooted in real things that happened to me and my wife throughout our relationship, especially starting out, driving a really lousy car around the country. I mean, back and forth from coast to coast, multiple times. That's how we traveled. We camped out, crashed on people's couches. And one time she gave me way too many mushrooms because I had refused this trip that she had won this raffle, and I was off tour and I didn't want to go on another plane, and I was losing my mind. So let's just drive again like the old days. And then she said, oh, these mushrooms are stale. You can eat as many as you want. She filled this whole piece of pizza, and they were fine. They were perfectly potent. And I had a strange experience, but it was beautiful because I was with someone that I loved, that I knew cared. You know, it's one thing to do that at a concert or something else where you're around strangers. It's a totally different thing to do it around people that you truly feel seen and loved by. And I think it reminds me of doing mushrooms in a lot of cases, reminds me of, there's this undeniable love and beauty we have in ourselves that it taps into. It's like a hopefulness in our own spirit that you don't always get. You don't get. Drinking can bring out a dark side to people, and weed can bring out a paranoia. And for me, there was a lot of love that came out, and it was just a side of me that I really like wanted to see more of and liked, you know.
Yeah.
So it surprised me because I thought I thought like, this is gonna be a big mistake.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's great to hear. And I know we're getting close to our time here. Maybe just one more question about the music video.
Yeah, that was shot predominantly in Florida, actually.
Really?
You might recognize some of the swamps.
Yeah.
Because it was one of the only places the director could legally shoot a video at the time.
Wow.
So, and it happens to be where you can find a lot of interesting characters as is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think his goal, Kyle Thrash's goal with the video, which he did a beautiful, beautiful job with, was not to find actors, but to find real people telling their story about their love story or their broken heart. And, you know, just be a fly on the wall and see them acting almost like, you know, Planet Earth, where they're just doing what they normally do. And he has a camera.
Yeah.
And so everybody he found there's a lot of situations where people wouldn't show up and he'd find someone else, you know. There was a guy that gave himself all his own tattoos that's in the video.
Wow.
And that was because he was at a rest stop and he saw this guy who looked interesting. And he said, "Hey, would you mind if I followed you with the camera for part of an afternoon?" And he's like, "Yeah, come on over." And
Wow.
they told their story and he was like in tears hearing their story. So it's a lot of real people, and it's interesting, and it's sort of the sides of love that you don't always hear, but you feel in songs. You know, you feel all like the pain mixed with the absolute joy that it can be, that otherworldly feeling.
Yeah.
So I think he captured it really well. My wife's favorite part is she loves those like quads in the swamp that he pops a wheelie and they're making out while he's popping a wheelie.
Yeah.
That's definitely FLA.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to have a little chat with me. Really excited to spend some time with you here in the city. With the rest of us Florida men. So it's gonna be a good time. I'm excited. Yeah.
All right, awesome, man.
It was great chatting with you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, take care.
Great.